I'm running for 8th Division Juvenile Court.
I guess, tell me a little bit about Suzanne Lumpkin.
I was raised in a military family, lived overseas for most of my upbringing, moved here in 1989, and chose to stay here. I think Little Rock is a wonderful place to raise children. I am married and have 4 children and 3 grandchildren.
Right on. And I guess as best you can, because I know it's different with the judicial races, but I guess what would you say your platform is for this position?
My platform, Juvenile Court, is a rehabilitative court. I've been out there for 16 years out on Roosevelt Road, and I've been in all 3 of the courts out there. And my whole reason for running for judge is we have 2 positions coming open, and it's very important to me that those positions are filled by people who actually understand juvenile law.
And two, I know there's only so many things that you guys can actually change when it comes to the bench and everything. But what are some things that, just from your perspective, that you think that the courtroom needs to kind of change, update, or anything like that?
Well, it's very easy to sit here and say that I'm going to walk in there if elected and I'm going to make these massive changes. I think it's a little disingenuous to say that I will walk in there and just straight across the board make all of these changes. We have 2 venerable judges who are currently sitting on the bench in the positions that are coming open, and that would be Joyce Williams Warren and Wiley A. Branton Jr. I think they've done excellent jobs, and I think if these massive changes could have taken place, such as juvenile justice reform, they would have already done so. I think there is room for improvement. I think new laws, federal and state, have been handed down recently that require that these changes in juvenile justice reform take place. And if elected, I will ensure that those laws are followed. I think it requires a massive involvement from the community that these diversionary programs take place within the juvenile system, that is diversion programs versus delinquency lockups and things like that. There have been a lot of changes that have been made. They are being implemented as we speak, but yes, there's room for improvement.
Sure. I guess just for people who may not understand, I mean, because a juvenile court and, I guess adult court, if you will, it's 2 different worlds.
Correct.
I guess kind of break that down. I mean, what are some of those differences and how you apply different things and even procedural type things?
Well, it's statutorily separate. The juvenile code is in and of itself different, but I think the focus is on juvenile delinquency. But what people must understand that a large part of juvenile court is dependency neglect, and that is where children are brought into foster care when there's abuse or neglect by whatever legal caretaker of the children. So that could be, the mother and father, the grandparents, whoever has legal custody of a child. That's a huge component of juvenile court and often overlooked. In fact, I haven't heard any of the candidates speak of that. It's all about the juvenile delinquency, which is also a huge important component. We're seeing a huge uptick in foster care, children being brought into foster care, and that's a change from what we have been seeing, which was children not being brought into foster care and services being put into place to prevent that. But this is something that we see over time, and that's where my 16 years of experience exclusively out at juvenile court comes into play, because this is a pendulum. We see this. They don't come into foster care, then they do come into foster care, and it concerns me now because we are seeing these kids come back into foster care. And this requires a lot of court involvement, because unlike a divorce or an adoption or something like that, a foster care case typically takes 1 year, and many court hearings and staffings and things like that over the course of 1 case. So it's very, very involved, and I don't think people understand that.
Right. And two, we've all kind of noticed too that there's sort of a level of empathy and compassion that's really being emanated from the bench just in recent years, and I would assume too, especially at the juvenile court level, that's something that just needs to be put into practice. I guess, how important is that component from the bench, is having that compassion, that empathy?
So when I'm dealing with a client, I am trying to even that playing field so that I know where they're coming from, so that I can adequately represent them. When I have sat as special judge out at juvenile court, I'm trying to connect not only with whoever is in front of me, but also who is behind them, okay? Because we need to be able to reach those people in order to effectively deal with the person in front of us. Whether it's a child, a parent, it doesn't matter. And this is where my experience in raising 4 children and having 3 grandchildren differentiates me from my opponent in the greatest way. The experience is one thing, but having raised a family increases that compassion level beyond what you can get from not having children. Because that's a 24/7 job, and anybody that has had children understands that commitment beyond the bench or practicing law.
Let's switch gears a little bit here.
Yes.
You know, these are all very important races,
Yes.
but they just seem to be things that just the general public just doesn't seem to get into. And I know some of it's just the nature of how you guys can campaign and things like that, but why do you think people just don't seem to be as in tune with the judicial races as they probably should be?
Well, number one, we haven't had a judicial race like this in I don't know how many years. So there's a lot of open seats right now, and I think maybe the interest is a little more this round than it has been in the past. And number two, people don't necessarily think about judicial races until someone in their family is affected by going before a judge in a court. So that may be why, but you know what? I don't know why. One of the reasons I'm aware of it, not only because I'm running this time, is because I'm a lawyer. I probably don't pay as much attention as possibly I should in the state representative races. I'm not familiar with all the different little sub-districts and things that we have for representatives, so I'm guilty of that myself. But I don't know exactly why people aren't.
Well, does it feel like it's a lot of insider baseball when it comes to the judicial things? Because it does seem like it's a lot of lawyer speak, you know, and just kind of, I guess in a sense, just sort of moving up the chain.
It does. There are a lot of lawyers, however, that are not familiar with the 6.2, the 6.1. Why is there a difference? Why are there at-large seats and that type of thing? So there's been a lot of education that had to take place in the judicial race among people who are familiar with the judiciary as well.
Also, too, how important do you think it is for judges to kind of be, I guess, out there? I mean, obviously there's that level of detachment that they have to maintain in order to, you know, remain unbiased on things, but how do you think that judges should be sort of just out there in the community, kind of put their faces out there? And then I guess kind of twofold here, do you think that there's a little bit of a responsibility to sort of educate folks to a certain degree, and maybe not so much like legal advice, but here's how the court system kind of works?
Absolutely. I do think judges should be involved, but as you said, there is that sense of boundary that I think needs to be there. And the reason I say that is because if you are too involved, then what are you going to do when those people or their families come before you in the courtroom? If you are too involved, you must be fair, impartial, and follow the law. And your impartiality, I think, can get a little muddled if you are too involved in the community. Must we be educators? Yes. Must we be in support of community involvement? Yes. All of those things, yes, but we must always be above the expectation of other people, and by doing so, we have to separate ourselves somewhat. I've been told by judges that being a judge is a very lonely position.
I guess final thing here, I'm Joe Q voter out here in Pulaski County. I don't keep up with a lot of the judges' races. I guess sell me on Suzanne Lumpkin.
Suzanne Lumpkin has the heart and soul of a juvenile judge. Suzanne Lumpkin cares about the children and families in our community. Suzanne Lumpkin has fought tooth and nail for the families and children in Pulaski and Perry County in the area of juvenile law. And I care about these children, and I care about these families. I am not a politician. I'm an academician who cares about the families and children in Pulaski and Perry County. And I care so much that I did put myself out there, and I am running for this position because I do believe that the families and children deserve a good judge, and I believe I am that person.